Lord of the Mysteries. Chapter 395. The Sheriff Beyonder Characteristics. Black Emperor? The hangman, who was casually listening to Miss Justice, suddenly raised his head. His gaze suddenly became sharp and piercing. He had just learned that the card in Mr. Fool's hand was one of the cards of blasphemy created by Emperor Roselle. The name of the card was Black Emperor. Does this have to do with Mr. Fool? Alger quickly glanced at the end of the long bronze table, before immediately lowering his head. If it was really done by Mr. Fool's blessed, this definitely isn't a simple matter. Alger listened attentively to Miss Justice's subsequent descriptions. Furs, who had long since learned of this from Zyle and had some predictions about it, also gave the Fool a glance. She wanted to see the truth from the concealed entity's reaction, but the Fool remained as calm as ever in the thick gray fog. Audrey, who wasn't able to glean anything either, paused for a moment, then continued. The victim is a tycoon Capim. Many rumors point to him being the biggest human trafficker in Backland. Hero bandit Black Emperor infiltrated his villa and robbed him of his life, rescuing many innocent girls who were locked up in his underground dungeon. When Capim's corpse was discovered, it was covered with a deck of tarot cards. His face was covered with the cards, Judgment, and the Emperor. She didn't mention the safe as she found it unimportant. Covered with tarot cards? Is that the symbol for when our tarot club takes action? Wait a minute, a human trafficker? Alger sharply noticed a phrase. He turned to the end of the long bronze table and humbly asked, Mr. Fool, is Capim related to the disappearance of the colonial slaves? The latter was a mission had been assigned to him by the Church of Storms, and he had formerly targeted a suspect named Balin and had asked Backland residents, Justice, the Magician, and the world, to keep an eye out for him. As a result, upon hearing the word human trafficker, Alger intuitively believed that it had something to do with the disappearance of many tribes on the southern continent and the flight of many slaves from many islands in the Sonia Sea. He felt that only a matter such as this, which seemed to hold some secrets, could interest Mr. Fool. Of course, it cannot be ruled out that it was an independent act by Mr. Fool's blessed. He couldn't possibly be waiting for everything to be arranged like a manipulated puppet. Alger thought. Capim has something to do with the recent disappearance of the colonial slaves. On second thought, that's not a possibility that can be eliminated. There were 4 Beyonders in his villa, and that in itself isn't normal in the first place. Even if a tycoon like him were to hire Beyonder bodyguards, then he would only be able to get a sequence 7 and 2 sequences 8s or 9s at most. Back then, Horace, together with his mystical items, was equivalent to a sequence 5 expert. The hangman's words jolted Klein's thoughts as he felt that the matter could vaguely be linked together. However, he wasn't sure about his theory, and he could only disregard the hangman's question. He chuckled and said, My blessed made some minor contributions in this matter. As expected. Audrey's eyes shone brightly as she cheered in her heart. As expected. It's the first time that I encountered anything to do with the Tarot Club in real life. Furs was half happy and half wistful. Alger believed that Mr. Fool's words were an indirect confirmation of his conjecture. Capim was definitely not a simple human trafficker. Otherwise, he wouldn't have caused a hidden existence's blessed to take action. Therefore, there was a strong correlation between the human trafficking and the disappearance of the slaves. Both were matters that weren't simple. Without waiting for Miss Justice to speak, Klein lightly tapped his finger on the edge of the ancient long table and leisurely added, He obtained 2 Beyonder characteristics from this matter and wishes to sell them as quickly as possible. The 2 characteristics correspond to Sequence 8 Sheriff, and the other is Sequence 7 Interrogator. Sheriff, Interrogator. Aren't those from the Arbiter pathway which is controlled by the Augustus family? Only members of the royal family, ancient nobles, and the military could possibly acquire them. Capim had one of them backing him? Not excluding the possibility of the Fainapotter Kingdom's Castilla family. Alger frowned, feeling that the disappearance of the slaves wasn't as simple as it seemed. Audrey's thoughts were similar to his. She had never thought that the Beyonders at Capim's villa would be from the Arbiter pathway. It's impossible that the faction in control of the corresponding formulas would collude with a human trafficker like Capim. Audrey pursed her lips slightly, puzzled and confused. Sheriff? Furs, who knew that her good friend Zio was saving up for the potion ingredients for this sequence, sat up hurriedly and asked in puzzlement. Mr. Fool, what are Beyonder characteristics? That's not what I expected. Shouldn't you directly ask me how much it is? That's right, I don't think I've ever told Miss Magician about the law of Beyonder characteristics, indestructibility, and conservation. Klein was taken aback for a moment, and then he began to consider his tone. And at that moment, Audrey spoke out on his behalf. Mr. Fool, may I answer the question? The corresponding payment shall be paid directly to you. She and Furs are friends, and she had volunteered out of the fear that Mr. Fool wouldn't share that knowledge again. No problem. Klein smiled in response. Miss Justice is always able to worry about the things that trouble me. He sighed with emotion inwardly. Phew. Audrey breathed a silent sigh of relief and turned to face Furs. She deliberately didn't use the pronunciation and unique vocabulary of a noble to say, Do you want to know the answer? What are you willing to pay? Furs nodded without hesitation. Of course. She looked at the figure shrouded in gray fog and respectfully asked, Mr. Fool, can I use another chapter of the sights in the spirit world as payment? She specifically emphasized, another, because she knew that the chapter she would give to Mr. World would be first sacrificed to Mr. Fool, and the knowledge that could be viewed at any time didn't seem to have any value for a transaction. It wasn't to say that she suspected that a mighty figure like Mr. Fool would pique. She just felt that it was more sincere to change the chapter. Sometimes, a mighty figure only cares about your attitude. Furs had read such things in many novels. Leaning back in his chair, Klein replied in an unconcerned tone. Sure. Thank you, Mr. Fool, Furs said, unable to suppress her smile. She instinctively believed that she had come into contact with certain secret high-level knowledge. Audrey was completely relieved as she smiled faintly. In the Beyonder world, there is a law. Remember, it's a law. In similar pathways, the total Beyonder characteristics are conserved, never reducing or increasing. It will only move from one entity to another, changing from one form to another. Therefore, after the death of a Beyonder, their characteristics will be separated and become equivalent to the main ingredient of a potion. Oh, apart from the remains of rampagers. There are too many latent troubles with those, so they can only be made into items. After the death of a Beyonder, their characteristics will be separated and become equivalent to the main ingredient of a potion. In that instance, it was as if lightning flashed through Furs's mind, allowing her to understand many things. It turns out that the remains Mrs. Elisa left me was her Beyonder characteristic. It turns out that in the eyes of others, every Beyonder is equivalent to walking ingredients. That's really dark. Furs clenched her fists tightly, feeling that the Beyonder world was essentially filled with madness. However, she didn't feel disgusted by the fact that she had become a Beyonder because she had consumed the Beyonder characteristics left behind by Mrs. Elisa. Instead, it gave her a faint sense of warmth. After losing her mother, before she met Zio, Mrs. Elisa was the person who treated her the best. For Furs, it was a sad but warm experience for her to inherit Mrs. Elisa's remains and be with her forever. So that's the case. The law of Beyonder characteristics, indestructibility, and conservation. That means the characteristic left behind by a Sheriff Beyonder is equivalent to all the main ingredients? Furs asked an additional question to verify her thoughts. Yes. Audrey also thought of Zio. Furs immediately stood up and bowed to the mysterious existence that was looking down at everything. Mr. Fool, can you get your bless to reserve the Sheriff's corresponding Beyonder characteristic? I wish to buy it, but I temporarily lack the funds. Please give me another week, is that fine? Sure. Klein took on an attitude as though he didn't care. Furs heaved a sigh of relief and quickly asked, How much does your blessed wish to receive in gold pounds? The price of a corresponding sequence 8 Beyonder ingredient is around £300. Klein smiled. £600. After naming the price, he immediately switched topics, showing that he didn't care about a sequence 8 beyonder characteristic. He looked around and conjured a few goatskin parchments. This is the meaning of a portion of Roselle's secret symbols. It's considered free knowledge, making it easier for you to collect the diary entries in the future. The information included numbers and dates. The reason why Klein had taught the members of the Tarot Club this information was that he was afraid that they would later end up buying counterfeits. With the knowledge of dates, they'll be able to eliminate most counterfeits. Klein chuckled inwardly. Audrey and the others were pleasantly surprised, never expecting to gain such knowledge. Although they had already discovered that the secret symbols on the goatskin were the simplest ones, they all believed that this was a good start. With the first time, there would be a second time and a third time. After a short exchange, Klein said in a gentle tone, "Let us end today's gathering here. By your will." Audrey, Alger, and the others stood up at the same time and bowed. The crimson rays of light dissipated, and the ancient palace above the gray fog returned to its former tranquility. Only Klein was left sitting alone on the high back chair belonging to the fool.